I have long mourned most bitterly in secret on this state of things. But when a scheme is actually put forth to abolish the very words of the ancient offices, and to reduce the services of Almighty God to the level of the conventicle, I can no longer remain silent. It is evident that the extreme hollowness of the present system is attracting attention. But alas, instead of advocating the only remedy, a return to the real music of the Church in all its purity, we are assailed by a scheme for its utter abolition. Monstrous suggestion, but by its very enormity, as I have before said, I trust in God that it will awaken our ecclesiastical rulers to a sense of the absolute necessity of casting aside all novelties and private conceits and returning to that music which has the sanction of ages and the full authority of the existing Church. What can be more perfect, what more edifying and consoling than the divine office, the compilation of so many saints and glorious men, and which is so wonderful in the perfection of its system and composition, that the more it is studied, the more it gains on our reverence and love. What more appropriate fitness in all the antiphons, what noble simplicity in the hymns, while the chant of the Psalter has an almost sacramental power in calming a troubled spirit and leading the soul to God. These were the divine chants that penetrated the heart of St Augustine, and though many centuries have elapsed, they have not lost one fraction of their influence. It is a monstrous error to suppose that the people cannot be brought to enter fully into the spirit of the divine office. In France, there is hardly a country parish where the people do not join in the Vesper chant and the offices with heartfelt devotion. The mass of persons are opposed to the plain song from pure ignorance. They do not understand it. All their ideas are perhaps formed from some miserably corrupt version they have heard drawled out by a cantor who scarcely knew a note of music. And they never trouble themselves to examine and study the wonderful beauty of these heavenly compositions, which, independent of their own intrinsic merit, have all the weight and authority of the Church to recommend them. To what extreme inconsistency and absurdity does not the substituting of any other music lead in the celebration of the divine office? It is well known that the Kyrie is ordered to be sung 9 times in honor of the Holy Trinity. Modern composers utterly disregard the mystical symbolism of the number and multiply the supplications to an indefinite repetition merely to suit their notes. Again, the priest intones the Gloria after the old traditions, while the choir takes it up in a totally different manner. The Credo, so far from being a distinct profession of faith, as ordered, is a mass of unintelligible sound. And at the Sanctus, where the priest invites the people to join with the angels and archangels in one voice, cum una voce. In singing the Trisagion, a perfect babble of voices usually break forth, and the triple Sanctus is utterly lost in a confusion of hosannas, benedictuses, and broken sentences, all going together in glorious confusion, which scarcely ceases in time to enable the distracted worshipper a moment's repose to adore at the elevation. After a short pause, the din recommences, and this generally lasts till a thundering Agnus Dei begins. Whether it is a spirit of pure contradiction that modern composers have usually imparted to this supplication for peace, the character of a great row, it is impossible to say, but such is decidedly the case. Some of these compositions would be admirably adapted for a chorus of drunken revellers shouting for wine outside a tavern. And if the words, "Wine, give us more wine," were substituted for "Dona nobis, nobis pacem," we should have a demand in perfect accordance with the sound with which it is accompanied. In lieu of this were the simple chant, as ordered by the authoritative books and the antiphonals and graduals of the Roman Church, restored. The people would soon be able to take part in responding to the clerks in the chancel. The Kyrie would alternate, the Gloria a real hymn of praise, and the Credo would be, again, a real profession of the Christian faith, not a piece of complicated music, while the O Salutaris would rise from the lips of hundreds and ascend with the incense to the throne of grace.
Gloria In glory.